Welcome to the Bachelor Universe podcast. I am your host, JimAlexander, joining with my co-host, as always, Jeff York. In a second, we are going over episode 5 of The Bachelor, and let's just get into it. I'm not in a good mood today, Jeff, and The Bachelor sure as hell not helping it out.
It isn't. It was a low of lows on many levels, so we'll get into them for sure.
I mean, geez. So episode 5, it's all about one damn person, and that would be Krystal. And you know, the episode starts off with a very paradise-like trip. I mean, a trip to the paradise they call Fort Lauderdale, Florida, for fuck's sake. I mean,
they all went down there by Southwest, I'm sure, you know.
Oh, my goodness. And what blew – I mean, it just like I knew it was a bad start to episode when Becca K says – like she's just like literally in nearly tears, you know, talking about how she's never – like her mind is blown, I believe was her quote being here. Mind is blown being in Fort effing Lauderdale.
I know. You think all these women would have been at least on 1 or 2 spring breaks in their day and probably hit Fort Lauderdale easily before they became sophomores in college. But some of these people act like they've been just taken to, the French Riviera or something.
Jeff, I'm like trying to be creative with these messages I'm sending to girls online. And these women are just like easily satisfied with a trip to freaking Fort Lauderdale. Where am I looking? What is wrong with my life then? How am I not finding these women who are so easy to please, have no absolute expectations or anything? I mean, my goodness. Mikkel's back, or Markel, or whatever her name is. She's back from the funeral, but now she's about to be grieving her own future on the show. And then we have a solo date, and it's Chelsea, the mom, finally gets a solo date. So there we go. She got a jet ski date. Basically, hey, not only are we cheapening out by taking you to Fort Lauderdale, we got you guys jet skis for today, and that's all you're gonna do. And these snoopy, like stalkerish women are just like looking out the balcony, seeing Arie make out with her. And Jeff, the best quote was, I think when Arie, like right after that date. He basically starts, asking her that, you were so great. Like, he was so impressed with her. You were so awesome. She didn't even jet ski, Jeff. She was just sitting there making out with him. I mean, what is wrong with this world? Can you, feed me some reality and some common sense, because I just don't get this anymore.
Well, it's sort of like they're getting lazy themselves on the production side. Going from those really wonderful overhead shots of the paragliding from a week or so before to this, where they're out and, they're all but sitting there on the the jet ski. There's no great shots. There's no kind of action scenes. They're just sitting there making out. They might as well be on the dock. And I just thought, everybody's kind of lazy, or they're over these people, or maybe they don't like her, Chelsea. I don't know. But I mean, they're making out, and it's another opportunity for Arie to live up to his kissing bandit reputation, and get the stalker angle. But they slow down the little jet ski so the girls can see it, and it just turns into this really dull date. And I thought, yawn, why? There you go again. And then they pull out the same old BS of, some unknown singer waiting there to
in a garage,
in a garage, and they all act like she's some big deal. And it's like, who? Everybody at home is, Googling who the hell she is, because they don't know. It's just another random singer. But there's Chelsea acting like, oh, this is such a great date, and here I am, and whatever. It's like, instantly forgettable on so many levels, including the singer who's brought in to, sort of get some attraction and buzz going on iTunes.
Well, before the singing, there was big encounter between Chelsea and, of course, Arie having that conversation of depth and talking about, how her, sad story of her ex leaving her for another woman. I mean, they tried to play this up as dramatic, but it just didn't ring with me at all. I mean, sadly, this is a story that most women face, so this doesn't make Chelsea special at all. But it was special enough to give her credibility and get her that rose and just completely remove her from any sort of villain status forever.
Right. I mean, she actually came off thoughtful or, like more well-rounded as somebody who has had some ups and downs. And indeed, it is difficult being a single mom in this dating environment. A lot of men do not want a ready-made family when they date somebody, even somebody as attractive as she is. And I give the show a little bit of credit, at least in that sort of area where they are now having these deeper conversations about what it really takes to be in a relationship, because so oftentimes they don't. They just have the kind of gooey romantic version of it, like, wouldn't it be great if you could be like my soulmate, and this is the beginning of our relationship together, and we'll look back on this and say it all began of this pork chop dinner and this singer that nobody's heard of.
Right.
Where here, at least, they're talking about age and differences in that and differences in life experience. And Arie, if he came off well in this episode at all, I think he came off well by having conversations that at least got into some of those areas that aren't quite as gooey and romantic and frivolous. There's a certain depth to them. Now, I'm not suggesting that he's getting into Dr. Phil territory, but at least with people like Chelsea, he was putting it out there and they were having a conversation that went beyond mostly what you hear at the Bachelor dinner dates and such.
Yeah, I mean, part of me thinks that, with his relationship with Emily Maynard and he had previously, he kind of is drawn to these single mothers. And he definitely isn't fearful of them. He's not like Nick Viall or any one of those guys running away for the hills. I actually wouldn't be surprised if he, if Chelsea had been a better contender, that he would have picked a woman with a child. I don't think he's scared off of that. And I think his age has to play into that.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. And I think that is the one thing that he does have going for him is that by and large, he seems to have gotten past the girls. And there's so many girls who show up on The Bachelor where they're young, they're doing it because they're models or actresses, probably looking for a boost in their career, or they just kind of approach it with that. I mean, I think that's a problem with Krystal. Krystal, despite all of her attempts to be the villain and do all these controversial things a la Courtney Robertson, she's not a very good actress. She's not a very compelling personality. And I don't believe any of it really from her, except that she's sort of vacuous and self-centered, which could be describing any young model / actress wannabe in Hollywood who's always concerned about them getting an audition, them getting a reading, them getting into the room to meet with a producer or whatever. I think she's almost regarding the show and Arie as one and the same. Now, you could say that's for the wrong reasons. At least they haven't brought that phrase up too much this year. But the more interesting people that Arie seems to be responding to are people who are willing to talk about this relationship beyond the game show fantasy of it. And that even goes back to Becca, who, for her young age, had a couple of decent conversations with Arie in the last couple episodes about their age differences and how she regards sort of looking for somebody and what she wants and whether that's something that he could sort of open up his mind to because she is so much younger. I have to say, there was a cautionary note in this episode where Arie brought up the age thing again, and Becca sort of had to go back there and defend it. And I actually felt really sorry for her at the moment because I thought she had a better handle on it than he did. Like, she's not the one with the problem with this. He is. And I think the fact that he's kind of obsessing and he brings it up, and we didn't see a lot of him with her this episode, but that's what they highlighted. It still bothers him, and I'm just wondering if that could be potentially a factor as it goes on. But at least he's thinking in this world. He's well beyond the age when he can just think about it as this fantastical, amazing journey. It's got to be something grounded. It's got to be something more real.
He's not a Ben Higgins. He's not a Chris Soules or a Nick Viall. And those are three guys who just wanted to, especially in the case of Chris Soules and Ben Higgins. I mean, not Ben Higgins that much, but Chris Soules and Nick Viall, who were desperate to be on TV. And I don't think this guy needs TV. I think he's successful enough and has enough money where he honestly probably doesn't care to be on TV. And because he comes from fame, and he comes from a background of a father who had fame, and fame was part of their life. So I don't think he's like that TV attention grabber kind of guy. I don't think he needs this really. And
he's also had a little bit of a career where there's high risk, and it's a complicated career, and it's being an athlete and to some degree already in the public eye. So I think the novelty of like, oh my gosh, the cameras are following me around, I'm a celebrity, that's old hat to him. And plus, he went through The Bachelor already. So a lot of the setup dates and the fantastical locations and all that doesn't really phase him. I mean, he's appreciative of it. I'm sure he loves that he's the star of this series and getting paid well for it, and gets to have all these women vying for his attention. And they go to these interesting locations, albeit next week when they finally get over to France. Fort Lauderdale sure isn't one of them, but he doesn't seem to be easily taken in by all that the way it seems so often is the case on The Bachelor, whether it's the contestants or the central person in the middle.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm actually surprised now thinking about it that they didn't try to consciously ask him or find out or bring on more young mothers, since he's so receptive to him, unlike other scenes where he had like Amanda Stanton with, 5 kids or whatever.
Right. I mean, yeah.
It's from Ben Higgins,
You'd think of all the people who they could get some of those kind of contestants in front of a Bachelor candidate, it would be Arie, because of the fact that he's 36 and looking to settle down and not sort of turned off by that as a potential soulmate or choice.
Yeah. No. So, I mean, going past that, we're moving on from Arie and his maturity. You can't give him too much credit.
Well, let's knock him a little bit down than a couple pegs, because the one thing I'll say about him is I think he looks tired and bored.
Yes,
and maybe that goes with some of the maturity, where he's not going to get overly excited or be giddy and kind of silly and like, oh my God, look at all the money they're spending on. I'm up here in a hot air balloon. Holy shit. But on the other side of that, he seems very nonplussed by almost all of it. Even with the big scene where he had to go up and talk to Krystal, I thought he handled it very well. I think he should have sent her home, but we'll talk about that more. But he doesn't seem fazed by that. When women are all telling him, oh, she's called you a liar, and she's impugning your character, and she's making us all uncomfortable, and she's kind of cast this sort of sour cast over the whole evening because of her deciding not to show up for it. You tend to think, well, isn't that going to get him mad or get him kind of lively and so show some pizzazz? Not really. I mean, he was like, shit, I got to go up and do this.
Exactly.
Like, it was hard for him to walk down that hallway. He just wanted to sit for a couple hours and have all the girls come to him.
Right.
No, I gotta trudge up that hallway, and the cameras, we gotta wait for them in 10 minutes. Anyway, but yeah, he seems disinterested, I think, through this whole thing. Very blasé.
Yeah, very much, and more so than anyone else.
Yeah.
So the second date, I mean, you have a group date, and what better place to really splurge your production money after you saved that being in Fort Lauderdale, and you didn't pay anything for the jet skis. So you know what? I think the best deal is to check out Groupon and see if there's any deal for groups to go to a bowling alley.
And during the afternoon when it's really like the senior Tuesdays, right?
Yeah, it might be cost efficient. Let's go have an afternoon date at a bowling alley, and like not even let's go to like Lucky Strikes or Pinstripes or even like the lower tier Brunswick zone in a sense, which isn't that lower tier. It's teenagers bowling alley. But no, let's go to a soddy, dirty, stinking old bowling alley locally. So that's the place to go to.
Yeah, when I think of great dates, I don't think of bowling alley in Fort Lauderdale. I mean, something indoors that's a winter sport, and it does not go together. The other thing too, I was just going to say, I was saying that they were not spending a great deal of time making the jet ski date look very exciting. I will tell you this: the production team really spent their time and energy and effort in storyboarding the setup for the bowling scene. The complete out the window parody of The Big Lebowski was a shot for shot almost remake of that, rather well done. But of course, everybody goes like, well, the big bowling movie is The Big Lebowski. We can do a parody of that, where they introduce the character of Jesus, played by John Turturro in the movie. But of course, the joke of it, even though they show, Arie licking the ball just the way Turturro did in that movie, is the character that he was playing in that was a pederast, which almost works as some sort of like subliminal suggestion that Arie is robbing the cradle by going for such young contestants. So they thought, hey, we're going to be really cool to make this Big Lebowski parody, but it ended up being a little bit kind of skeevy because, you're actually doing sort of a disservice to the older Bachelor, suggesting that maybe there's more of a connection to the character that Turturro played in there, and especially with the whole age consideration. So I thought that was unintentional, but made it all the more hilarious. And I give the production team credit. They shot and edited that pretty well. I'm a Big Lebowski fan, and that was one of the better efforts they put into editing and sort of finding a point of view on a sort of scene in this episode, or maybe all season.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, their production quality is always high, they have high level production, and just they have some great editors at that production over there, because their editing team is top notch.
Of course, not good enough to edit Arie looking like he actually bowled a strike. When they show him bowling, you can tell that the ball is not going to take down all the pins. But then they cut to that, plug-in close-up of all the pins falling, and then they cut back to Arie, and his body is conveniently covering up the pins down the lane, so we can't really see what happened there, because, of course, it isn't actually the ball he rolled. He didn't do quite well on that one anyway. So, again, deft editing, but still, if you're looking close enough, that's not Arie bowling a strike. You could tell that it didn't quite match, and the trajectory of that ball was such that it was not going to knock down all 10 pins.
Right. I mean, that's then we had the women were split into two teams, right. And of course, what's at stake? I mean, we're not trying to set records. We're just trying to get a date with Arie.
Right. Which they want to be the team that gets the after party, right?
We're not bowling at 300 here. This is bigger than that. Okay. So this is the top of the thing you could get is a date with him. So the team, there's a blue team and a black or pink team. I don't know if you want to call them. They couldn't pick an outfit that like matched one color.
Right.
So that other team got their asses handed to them because the team that was blue with Krystal dominated and won. So that means they get a date with Arie. But Arie is one of those guys. He's a new age man. And what do I mean by that? Even though he looks like he's, from 3 generations ago, a baby boomer. But Arie to me is a new age man because he believes in participation trophies. And that is that this man, you can't lose. A loser is still a winner in his world. So you don't need to actually win because everyone gets a trophy at the end of the day. And in this case, everyone wins the bowling game, so he invites all the women, because why would he logically leave some women out of the loop and out of the opportunity to date him? So he's just a giving guy that incorporates everyone and invites everyone to join him.
Well, the other thing too, I have to tell you, and maybe this is because I can tell who he sort of likes and who he doesn't like as much. But there were 3 people on the pink team that I think he wanted to hang out with because they're better company. The 2 Beccas, Becca M and Becca K. He's got a good rapport with both of them already. They were on the pink team. And wasn't Sienna on the pink team as well? So I thought, the reason he wants to open it up is not only is a new age kind of guy where everybody gets a trophy for participating, but women he likes are on that other side, and he probably figures he'd have more fun talking to them. Not that he didn't have plenty of women he could talk to and be interested on the blue team, but we know that he really likes Becca M. And I think, as evidence from the date tonight, too, and some of the smaller scenes that we've seen in the past, he seems to like Becca K as well. In fact, he took Becca K into a private room and he invited her there, and they had a pretty good little tete-a-tete. So I kind of wondered if maybe it was a little bit of ulterior motives as well as that idea of letting everybody feel like they're a winner.
Yeah, but that whole decision came with a major cost.
Yes, and the true drama of the episode.
Losing the faith. He lost Krystal's faith in him. And that is just, that's an epic meltdown. That's an epic loss right there. That's just an epic fail by Arie, because Krystal is so bent out of shape over this that she pouts and kicks and screams and puts on her nice looking white robe and stays in her hotel room and does not want to go on a date.
Yeah, full makeup on, by the way, just in case she decides to go down later or the cameras are going to spend excessive amounts of time watching her pout in the room. And of course they do. And of course she does, as we know, eventually go down there. But, you know, in some respects, I have to say Krystal maybe had a little bit of a point. I think she took the wrong avenue to express it. But when you say, here's the stakes, and then you change the stakes, it is a little bit of an insult to the people who maybe put their hearts into the bowling and tried to do as well as they could, or just simply won for whatever reasons. I mean, again, this is a show that rhyme or reason doesn't necessarily apply to, so maybe the histrionics over it was too much on Krystal's part, but she did have a point about it. But of course, she doesn't express it in the mature way. She could have taken him aside and said, "Hey, I feel really hurt that you did this, because usually the winning team does get a benefit of it. There is a benefit in winning, and you get more of that Arie time. And frankly, in the competition, those moments matter, because now I've got to share my time with another 7 girls, and that isn't fair to me. And I was on the winning team, and you set this up as the rules, and then you change them afterwards." Good point. She might have been persuasive on that. She might have even won over the audience, but she gets there by calling Arie a liar in front of all the girls, and then they're complaining about it, and she's just toxicity again by bringing the whole party down and making everybody upset, and it all becoming about her. And then, of course, the big thing is she completely contradicts herself later and joins the party after she made this big stand about not going down there because she believes in principles, and then she sells her principles out as much as she accused Arie of.
Yeah, I mean, and of course, Arie had to play peacekeeper and run over there to her room and try to calm her down. But Jeff, I think there was the biggest telling moment of that episode when he went in there. For the first time, actually, I genuinely felt he was done with her. He did not look at her. He did that whole Arie shunning a woman, which means Arie shuns a woman means he's not interested in her, where he looks right, like he can't face her. He can't look her in the eye. He keeps his physical distance from her, and he's done. I mean, this guy just he's so telling. He has zero poker face whatsoever. I mean, thank God Jessica Chastain and Molly Bloom didn't get him into that underground thing, because he lost all the money possible. This dude has no poker face. So he gives it away right away, and it was the first sign that he was checked out with Krystal. That's right. I think we knew right there she's eliminated. In his mind.
Yeah, Molly's game would have cleaned out Arie in the first night, and I think Krystal sunk her battleship for sure in this night. Of course, she comes back because they have to have her one more time. The producers are probably taking Arie aside and offering him all kinds of incentives to keep her around one more time. She's the producer's pick. She's the controversy. She's the villain. She's going to go to France next week, so they get her overseas. They get her in the Exotic locale. She's got another 2 hours to wreak havoc. Maybe she'll go home. Maybe she'll go home the next round. But you're right. He was done with her right then, and he could not fake that. And that's my biggest problem with this show now, is I think certain people are not playing the game very well. And that's good in Arie's case, where he's being kind of transparent and letting us know exactly how I feel. But I think it cheapens the show, because it makes the show look like, okay, we have to have these certain plot points to keep it as a soap opera, to keep the audience vested, to make controversy. there is no way on God's green earth, Jim, that Arie, after that meeting where he could not even look her in the face, and he said some very cold and dismissive things to her, and righteous as they were, because he was completely in the right to call her out on them. There's no way in God's green earth that he would have picked her to come back. And he sends a couple of nice girls home who, we don't know who they are as much, and he doesn't have much rapport with them. But honest to God, did he have any rapport with the girl that he was kissing tonight, and what's her name Jacqueline? She seems like a nice, smart person, great backstory. We haven't seen her do anything tonight, but he finally saw fit to sit and talk with her, and the producers showed that. But, Jacqueline was good, but some of the people that he sent home didn't need to go home. Marique and Mikkel, I think, were much more worthy of sticking around. I would have kept around Marique just to talk to her. To me, Marique is like this interesting person. She's supposedly a restaurant owner. Now, is that a family business? Perhaps. But let's see Arie show some interest in her. She looks immaculate always. She never looks drunk. Her eyes are never glazed over. Kendall's eyes got very glazed over the 2 nights when they had the parties and stuff. So, some of these gals cannot handle their drinks after midnight. But he sends those 2 good gals home and keeps her on the god-awful Krystal. So now it's the show. The show is working.
Jumping to the end.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Your excitement for some of these women and your disdain for Krystal is jumping to the end of everything and closing the bow tie on this. We still have a swap date ahead.
Oh yeah. I mean, and I didn't mean to get already to the climax of the show. I didn't mean that. I just was sort of using that as a thing that it goes against the feelings of the characters and the natural narrative that's being set up, and it seems phony to me, because you can tell that the show is now manipulating Arie, manipulating the process, and frankly manipulating me as an audience member, and I resent it. We've watched this show too much to know that this is not somebody he would pick. But let's go back to the other ones. You're right. There's a whole bunch of other stuff we can talk about that's funny.
Yeah. I mean, when the Krystal thing erupts, there's one woman that keeps on going after her, and that's your favorite pixie cut.
Becca M.
She's all about being the ringleader in the whole let's grill Krystal.
Yeah, and you know what? Let's talk about her for a second, because we know that she's fairly shrewd and she's very savvy and self-aware, especially for somebody that young. It's kind of extraordinary in a way. But she's definitely turned up as the person who's calling the people on their bullshit. She is definitely the Vanessa Grimaldi or, some of those kinds of people who are not going to, Allie. Remember Allie years back? She was that girl who is always calling on the bullshit. And she's suddenly that girl. So not only is she the big kissing queen, but now she's this sort of strident voice of reason, just borderline a little bit getting too much into that. I don't know if she needed to go into that fray, but she clearly is as irked by Krystal as we are. And yeah, it's kind of funny to see. She was openly mocking her, doing a very funny imitation of her. It's almost like she's too confident. And I wonder if that's maybe not good for her. Is she peaking too soon? I don't know.
Yeah, I think she's the alpha male in this whole house.
Yes. You're right.
She's the one that takes reins of everything. She's the one that starts up the conversations, and she's the alpha female in the house. It could be even more of an alpha than Arie.
Yes.
You
ring up a really good point, Jim. In fact, I have to be honest with you. I suppose we can bring it up now because we're talking about Becca. I've been saying I think she's the clear winner or the clear lead in this. I think she still is the clear front runner because, again, the cameras linger on her kissing at length and lots of open mouth tonguing and all that kind of stuff with Arie again tonight. They just love showing all that. So clearly they like her in the production. They keep showing her. They focus on her. They think she's cute and sexy and funny, and they keep showing her in these other interviews, and now she's even imitating Krystal and some of that. But I will say this, and I know this is getting to the back end a little bit too, but she is not suffering Krystal or this process as well as you might expect. In fact, I think for the first time, I thought, man, if she doesn't make it to the final, she might be the person who takes herself out. I'm not necessarily saying she's going to walk away from the show, but I just saw a little bit of her tonight not buying into it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I see that too. She's got an opinion and she's got a way about her and she's sticking to it. So that's definitely one thing that was noticeable. Another thing was noticeable, which was the obvious, is Tia. And what's noticeable to me is that clearly Tia, we talk about being impressed by Fort Lauderdale. Fort Lauderdale is like Dubai compared to the date where Tia and Arie went to next. And that would be, where would you want to go and impress a woman and really get her really all riled up about you in a good way where she just can't get you off her mind? Well, you take her to the swamps. And not like to dump a body into the swamps, which would be probably the place where most movies have taught you things would happen like that at these Florida Everglades. But right away, Tia was genuine. You talk about genuine feelings and emotions. She was elated. She called the swamp like being in nature. Now, I don't know. I know she comes from Arkansas. I don't know what kind of nature you can find with festering alligators inside and seaweed. Not even seaweed can't even grow in those swamps.
Oh, the Everglades smell too. I mean, it's just a bad. There's constant flies and bugs and gnats and every other thing around. You're in the open air on those gliders. It's god awful. There's no reason you would ever want to do that as a date. I mean, again, that shows lack of imagination on the Bachelor show this year. They say, well, we're in Fort Lauderdale, I suppose you should go to the Everglades. Really? I mean, you could go to Alligator Park or some other kinds of place like that if you want to sort of get into the local stuff, where God knows there's plenty of sort of the voodoo and some of that kind of stuff with the whole locale and locals and everything else there. But this is just an ugly date. Is it also condescending to the Southern girl contestant that their lunch then is insulting. Corn on the cob and fried frog legs? Like, of course, those Southern people, they like all that stuff, so we'll just feed her what she knows. I mean, I just thought that was kind of condescending.
I think they accomplished one good thing. That guy who gave him that ride, that is the new horror character. I think Hollywood should be looking. If there's anything they can take away, is this man should be in a film, and she should be playing the Swamp Man or whatnot. I think this is a new franchise that could be in the making with this guy as the lead, and I think you can sell the movie script. You as an accomplished writer, Jeff, I think, don't you see the wheels turning here? Like, you have this guy who gets these people come on a date to take a ride on the swamp, vehicle, and then he invites them over to his little cabin and presents frog legs, and then they never are to be seen again.
Yeah, and he feeds them to his crocodiles. And
this is a horror movie. It really
is. He's kind of like Ed Gein, in the swamp, if you will. Guests come in, but they never check out.
This is absolutely the thing to roll with. I mean, there's ideas right there. I mean, when I thought Nick Vile's voodoo swamp Louisiana trip was something, but this takes the cake. I mean, this is just the top of the cherry on this awful puddle of garbage. And they definitely were country living. And the thing is that, the intimacy that spawned off of this, when Tia is talking to Arie and and just kind of going about her background and, asking her about being raised in this kind of an area and her feeling so at home, and talking about how she moved out of her little town but now she's a big city girl. Listen, if this is big city, then I was living big time in Green Bay, okay, while I was there. If this is big city, then there's more revelations. I mean, and she's a doctor. I mean, and I'm like, oh my God, this woman's like like a big deal. But then she follows up. She's like a physical therapy doctor. And then Arie just undercuts her by telling her, well, you have to deal with mainly old people, right? Like, way to just like prop her up, Arie, and like take the carpet underneath her. I mean, the rug from underneath her. Like, he basically like just like took a leak on her career by saying like, well, you just deal with old people, you know?
I know,
like,
which is terrible. And like, well, he's a real estate guy, and I don't know. It was such a kind of condescending moment. But this whole season has been kind of that condescending theme throughout. You've got this older candidate who was nobody's first choice, and he was nobody's second, third, or fourth choice. A bunch of people who are sort of just bad contestants from the get-go. I mean, honestly, like Krystal's not even that attractive. It's not like Courtney Robertson, who you looked at Courtney and said, okay, she's kind of bitchy and mean and all that, but she's very attractive, and she's funny, and she's witty, and she had even Corinne had a certain amount of wit and half crazed kind of quirkiness to her that was infectious. But Krystal's just she's just bland, and she looks like, she's got the collagen lips, and she's a dime a dozen of the kind of girls who are in the jazzercise classes in Hollywood and maybe eventually crawl into porn or something if they can't make it other than, maybe B movies are in the background. But where's the budget for this show this year? I mean, they go up to Lake Tahoe, and that was nice, but then they go to Fort Lauderdale, and they're going to bowling alleys and the swamps, and I know they're going to go to France eventually and get over to some exotic countries, but I keep wondering as they're doing this did they shoot their wad on having to accommodate this Winter Games thing that's coming up, so they didn't have nearly as much money for this, so they had to kind of slum it and say, well, Florida's warm this time of year, and we can always go down there. And then they got down there and went, well, after we do the swamp thing, there's not much we can do outside. We've already done the beaches stuff and that while we were in California. So what do we do here? Let's go bowling. Mm-hmm. My friend here who's the DP, he's always wanted to do a parody of The Big Lebowski. That's about how much thought seems to be put into this. These are not exciting, one-of-a-kind, fantastical dates by any stretch.
Well, I mean, at least it worked, because she basically admitted to him that she's falling in love with him. And I think, Jeff, the second classic moment of this episode comes where he giggles when she says that.
Yes.
His reaction is a fucking giggle. Like, that's his reaction when this girl tells him. I mean, if he's not taking a leak on her already, like, he just continues it by telling, when she's like, this is a fairy tale, I'm falling in love with you, and he just starts laughing and giggling. I mean, it was absolutely classic what this guy did. And then, he makes her repeat it. He's like, well, say it again. As if now he's a fucking producer or a director. He's directing her to redo the scene to tell him that she loves him again. I mean, my God.
It's so true. It's so funny.
She gets like rose out of it, but man, that she had to work on it and take so much abuse and just like rejection from him and just like jokes and everything. Wow.
And the funny thing too is then after that date, he still didn't look tan. I mean, he's out there on the water all that time, and yet he never seems to retain any color. He's the pastiest bachelor we've ever had, and that was even after, Jake Pavelka lapsed into flop sweat every time somebody challenged him about Vienna.
And yeah, I mean, so once they got free from the swamps, more Krystal drama, because it's never ending cycle. So she's now ready to date Arie. She did a whole 180, and she's ready to date him, and Becca and her are bickering again. And then just Arie, you know what Arie's doing on his side? He's just like taking Kendall aside again. And we see more one-on-one time with Kendall than anyone else. And it's always so weird, because she had some 100 random odd, weird questions. How is this girl not pushing him away at this point? I mean, he's so reactive to some of these women that he's not into, but how is he still into her with her weird questions and her bizarre, interests? And he's like, oh, she's quirky. Like, I don't know. At this point, it's like game over.
Yeah, she's too weird, and she's really, really sweating to be weird, too. Those kind of questions, nobody asks those beyond 15 years old. They're silly questions. It's almost like some sort of bad Cosmo quiz that is really there just to be fluff and fill the pages. But she's putting it down as a real thing. Like, would you eat a human body if you, really? And then she goes, well, I would. Arie says, well, no, if it was life or death, I would. But she goes, well, I would. I'm up for anything. I try anything. She's a creative director. We don't know if it's for an ad firm or, in-house for a who knows what. It could be a pharmaceutical company for all we know. But she's supposed to be creative, but I think her versions of creativity seem pretty childlike and silly and almost obnoxious because those questions, it just becomes a quiz, and it doesn't seem like a very serious woman when she's sitting down and then asking that kind of question. Would you ever eat a human body? I think if she wanted to ask real questions to get to know him and know where he stands either intellectually or morally, there's a lot of questions she could ask. Like the one question that came up about, would you date somebody who wasn't religious if you were religious and went to church every Sunday? That's a good question. Those are the kinds of things that really prevent people from getting together because it has all kinds of implications for what are they going to do on the weekend together? How are they going to raise the kids? But sitting there saying, would you eat a dead body? And he goes, well, if I absolutely had to. In other words, he saw the movie Alive and knows that if he crashed in the Andes, yes, I suppose if I was really hungry after 10 days and somebody died there and I could just say, hey, look, it's a flesh popsicle. It's not so bad. I don't know whose arm it is. It's just one of the 6 that died, but I don't have to know who I'm eating. Maybe. But those aren't real questions that you would ask somebody if you were looking for even a Match.com kind of connection. There's real questions. Yes, exactly. And I'm sure you could tell us that those are the kinds of questions that would probably send you running away from somebody just because they're so frivolous.
Absolutely. And so the weirdness then turns into a season's first. And by season's first is the introduction. Meet Jacqueline, everyone. The girl who I thought was a producer all along, covering up as a girl in the house, is actually a girl in the house. And her name is Jacqueline. And
yeah, she's been in 5 episodes now, and this is the first time she's been given, I swear, even anything to say, right? Let alone a little screen time with Arie. I don't know if she's ever said anything since the very first episode.
Well, Arie tells us that they have amazing chemistry together. And that's crazy, Arie, because this is the first time we ever see you with her. So how do you
that ended up on the editing room floor, didn't it?
Oh, my goodness. There's that. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Jacqueline, your Bachelor debut, 5 episodes in.
By the way, Jim, let me ask you this. Don't you think she bears a striking resemblance to Tia? I think that they have kind of a similar dark hair and eyes and kind of the pointy nose. And sometimes I'm thinking, is that Tia or is that who is that? Which one?
Maybe he thought he was talking to Tia. Actually,
you wonder.
I don't know. Maybe that's why he talked about the chemistry. He might be wrong after all. Maybe he was right because he thought it was Tia, and they did a switcheroo on him.
That's funny.
And then, of course, we have the Arie and Krystal sit down before the rose ceremony. He looks disinterested. But then she just tries to save herself by bringing up the closeness she's felt with him. And she brings up all the watching of the VHS tapes that they done together as some bonding point,
Right. She's already been to his hometown. She doesn't need a hometown date, right?
Ugh. And then she talks about growing up in a bowling alley, which was probably the most truth she's spewed in the whole season. Yeah. Because I fully believe that. Yeah. That is absolutely so much truth to that. I can see her being a bowling alley child and adult and whatever.
Yeah, she's clearly got some real issues and selfishness and lacking of maturity and even sort of a low rent kind of quality to her and all this. I think she comes off as very base and very kind of skeevy. and I just again, she keeps making all this time, and the producers give her that airtime because they need somebody who's controversial. I'll say this: I think the middle pack of women here are all very respectable. They're likable. I mean, there's like Lauren and Kendall, and they're even though Kendall's a little bit weird with some of the stuff we talked about, and she did all that taxidermy stuff too early on. There's I get it, quality to her that makes her believable and likable. Their reactions to some of the drama and some of the controversies are normal reactions, and there's a good sort of middle section of these women here. But it's extraordinary that so few really stand out. I mean, I think that Tia, Kendall, even some of the people who've been on dates in the past, they're fine, but nothing that's remarkable. Again, here we have another episode where the two standouts are Krystal and Becca M, because Krystal is the controversial villain and Becca is the sort of voice of reason, and also one of the gals that Arie is all over and constantly gravitating towards, and at least the producers are. If Arie doesn't end up with her, the producers, at least up until and through episode 5, are in love with Beck M, because she's been getting so much screen time. Yeah. It's crazy. I've never seen a contestant get that much screen time compared to all the other girls this early in the game. So it might be something that all the other girls are just nice and sort of middling, but if she isn't the ultimate pick, then somebody fell in love with her. If it wasn't Arie, it was the producers, because she's got a lot of screen time.
So then we get to our rose ceremony, and this is a shocker, Jeff. 5 consecutive rose ceremonies for 5 weeks in a row. This is something we have not seen. This is new charted territories dating back from about 3 or 4 years ago. What's old is new again, and that's a rose ceremony. So it's getting out of hand at this point. I think we might have a whole season worth of rose ceremonies closing the show now.
It's so true. I think they may have felt the pressure. And I know there was always fan complaints about that they wouldn't complete an episode because they didn't end with the rose ceremony in years past. A lot of times they would have these cliffhangers. Well, let's see. And they'd start off the show with the rose ceremony, which seemed very strange. But you're right. They're doing it this time. I also think they're probably doing it, Jim, because they don't have much else that's that exciting. And it comes down to, is he going to, I mean, the whole reason for this rose ceremony was one thing. Is he going to keep Krystal or not? Well, of course he does, because we need to keep the villain around for at least a show or so more. But the rest of it was sort of a shrug. He let some good people go home, but we don't know them. We haven't seen them yet. He was on a date tonight, or at least talking to somebody who he said he felt a real connection with, and we've never heard her talk before. So the editing is off this season. It must be a terribly boring show, and they're trying to do what they can with it in the editing room, but there's some stuff editing on the editing room floor, and stuff that doesn't connect or make sense, and it's just strange. But you're right, they're having these rose ceremonies because they have to add some drama somewhere.
I enjoyed right before the rose ceremony, the shades of Krystal. She talked about all the shades she's shown Arie, or Shari. But
he's pretty Shari state.
Yes, every shade besides the 50 Shades Freed. That's the only shade she hasn't shown yet. Okay, and that's coming to you in about 2 weeks when they're promoting the movie alongside Winter Games. So expect that to happen too.
Well, go ahead, please.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say, the one thing that I will give the women in the house credit, and this is where I think they're all good, decent people, and they're maybe not exciting television, but they're admirable people who sort of get it, even though they're in this crazy, weird situation of a game show. When Krystal came and challenged them to speak to her individually if they had a problem with her and not do the group gang up on her because that was going to be wrong and she was going to feel too defensive and all that kind of stuff. I love the fact that a couple of women right away took her up on it, and they said, well, let's go talk. And they didn't hold back, and they weren't vicious. They weren't doing the old snapping fingers, kind of just doing it for the camera stuff. They really sat down and said, hey, here's why that doesn't work. And you're as guilty of hypocrisy as you accused Arie of. So why should anybody respect that or feel like they should think you're worthy of a second consideration when you're not standing up for your principles either? And you said, oh, I'm all packed and ready to go. Well, clearly you don't have those principles because you stuck around. You even came down dressed up for the cocktail party that night after making a big stink about not doing it. And they called her out on it. And even Becca, said, I'm waiting for you to answer. I'm waiting for you to answer, because Krystal wasn't even expecting that. She didn't think she'd have to answer or explain her stupidity because, of course, it's really indefensible and not easy to explain such a thing that is so bold-facedly dumb. But I give the women credit for a couple of them went right after her and said, fine, you want to do it individually? We'll take you up on that. Here's what we think. We're doing it in a calm, measured adult voice, and you still stink.
Yeah. So the roses went quick. Becca M got the first one. Cien got the second one. Kendall, Becca K got a rose. Jacqueline, Jenna, who he has no interaction with whatsoever.
Right.
And Krystal got the final rose very predictably. So that meant that Marquel, or whatever her name is, weird name, and Marique went home, and then a third girl, I had no idea who she even was. So,
yeah, the thing is, they're almost making it easy for us to predict who's going home each week.
Very
because
easy.
They're the people who didn't get any screen time, haven't done anything. And, he's sending home seemingly some nice people. And like I said, I think Marique had an interesting story. She's brings some diversity to this, which of course we're already on that track, one by one, whittling away the diversity.
Yeah.
But she was a restaurant owner and she's very poised and she seems very mature, kind of unflappable as all this drama is going around her. She's not too complaining or too upset about anything, but she's got a measured sort of take on it all, and she looks immaculate the entire time. So of course she's got to go. We can't have those people around. They're too measured and too good for television. We need somebody who's crazy. So she gets shown the boot, and meanwhile Krystal gets to go to Paris.
Yeah. And yes, I don't know who was the third girl that got eliminated. I couldn't even tell. She got so little screen time. And Marique, obviously, Mikel, and then who was that other girl?
I'm trying to think now. Who's that last girl?
Ashley? No, is there an Ashley? No.
I think you might be right. I'm not sure.
Well, clearly she didn't get much screen time, so that was
Was it another of the Laurens? Are we down to one Lauren now? Finally,
Lauren. So that was all she wrote. Some takeaways from tonight's episode. So I kind of recapping it. I think things are starting to finally take shape after this episode, kind of like we predicted last week they would. And you know what? For the first time, I actually feel there's some legitimate contenders now. Because besides Becca and Krystal, and there was really no one. I think this episode revealed that Tia very well has a chance to make it to hometowns. Yep. We were kind of looking for those hometowns last week. I think Chelsea has a much better chance. Will she make it to hometowns? Is still 50-50, but she has a better chance. I definitely think Becca K is going to be in hometowns. I think he's really into her. He pulled her into his suite.
Yep.
And, I definitely think that he's really considering her. And I think she's, at this point, almost a shoo-in to get into the top four. I really feel strong about Becca K.
He likes her, and she has no faults right at this point. In fact, it's interesting. I think the women who maybe are standing out or rising a little bit into, as we go into week 5 or 6, I guess it is, are that kind of quietly mature, maybe not too on either side, they don't burn too hot or burn or are too cold, but they're nice and warm somewhere in the middle. If you've got Krystal on the crazy side and Beckham on the sort of ingenue, instant superstar kind of the show's side, you've got a number of good, solid women in the middle who maybe could be more of what Arie's looking for, especially with his age and his kind of mellowness too. And you're right. I think Becca K is there. I think Chelsea, believe it or not, is there. Tia definitely there. Those three could easily be in the hometowns. And, one or two others that maybe Lauren, she seems to be getting some play next year next week in France episode. So, those women are all sort of in that middle range, nothing too flashy, but good, nice, smart, attractive people who haven't been falling over drunk or wimping out on whatever kinds of dates or group dates or things like that. And they seem to be very much in sort of the style of Arie. The two outliers are, like I said, both on those kind of opposites, and we'll see where they go. I still think Beckham is the most interesting potential mate for him. He brings up the age thing. She's a little bit
You're just
getting pulled into the mire a little bit. Maybe she's, I don't know, I could see maybe her pulling away from it herself, so she almost takes herself up.
Jeff,
Yes.
like realistically, they have no chance whatsoever together. I mean, that's one of the worst picks ever. If he picks her, it's guaranteed to go downhill. The age gap and his stubbornness to be with someone his age and have kids. I don't see Becca, no matter what she says, how real she can get and how smart she can, try to be. She ain't ready for no kids or marriage, no question. And this guy is. It's just completely not going to work. Right. That is a train wreck in the making right there.
And her energy level, while it's exciting when you're on a show like this or in a group date or you've got 15 minutes with her and you can make out with her a little bit, that's great. But his personality will not jibe with that beyond this kind of show. He needs somebody who's going to be more in that middle pack of sort of mellow yellow kinds of women who, are a little bit more experienced and a little bit the edges have been rounded off a little bit, and that's where he's at too. In fact, when he's with her now, I'm aware not of their age difference, but just the fact that she is so alive and she is so perky and she is truly a woman who's just starting out and nothing really phases her. It doesn't even phase her to think that, hey, I could go for somebody who's 14 years older if I feel it. And deep down, honest to God, Jim, I think she feels that. But that's also somebody who hasn't been burned, who hasn't been through the ringer, who hasn't been sort of shat on, if you will. And that energy and that sort of, naivete or guilelessness, whatever you want to call it, seems very at odds with him, I just see this man who's a little bit tired by it all, even tired of dating and maybe tired of having to get up and do this show every morning, even though he's only gotten 5 hours of sleep by the time the show's cocktail parties are done.
Yeah, no question. I think we mentioned, the Lauren B's, Becca case, Tia and Chelsea have a legitimate shot. But also, I think another thing we learned, I think next week's episode is going to be another easy elimination. I think we know easily that CN is going and Kendall's going and Jenna are going. Or actually, maybe Kendall and CN have a chance to stay, but guaranteed to be left. Depends how many he lets go. This might be the episode where I think the first one, when they ever go to a foreign country, I think that's the first episode where they go get rid of 3 or 4 actually.
Right.
That whole time.
Because they'll do 2-and-1s and stuff like that immediately eliminates somebody.
Yeah, so I think we might see 4 go, but I think the 3 guarantees are: you will not see Jenna after next week, you will not see Jacqueline after next week, and you're either not going to see CN or Kendall, or possibly both. I think those women are done. I just, for sure with Jenna and Jacqueline, Kendall or CN, one of them probably.
Yeah, I think you're right. And, at this point, it's going to be maybe the trajectory of the show to surprise us as the viewers with a couple of these people starting to come forward a little bit more. Becca has been there so strong throughout. Becca M, but Becca K seems to be gaining a little traction. It looks like Lauren gets some traction next week. Tia is starting to come on a little bit more. They may be more rising in this second half of the season. The other thing too is even in the previews when they show the little Folies Bergère thing and you see Becca M dressed up as this sort of coquettish chanteuse in the Folies Bergère, and she's got a little blonde wig on and she's escorting Arie onto the stage and stuff. She's so into that, and he looks like, oh my God, I'm wearing makeup. I just thought as I just saw that in the preview, I thought that's a couple that I'm not sure they're going to make it now to the final rose. I thought for sure she was, but the more he's around her and now he's starting to ask questions about her age, I think it's maybe a little bit more of an open game than I originally thought.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's opening up more because I'm starting to see some doubts in Becca, especially when him bringing it up again, her age out of nowhere. And she wasn't seen tonight, really.
Yeah, and she wasn't doing anything that seemed immature, or she didn't bring it up. He brings it up, which means it's on his mind. And as he's going through all this with this young woman who's just starting out, she's just tasting all life has to offer, and she's getting all this attention, and she's full of energy and all that. The more he spends time with her, I think she makes him feel young and makes him feel attractive and vital and all that stuff. But they're on very different planes. Very different planes. She
makes him feel young, Jack. That's what it is, and that's why he's so attractive. He's kind of like a schoolboy around her. He loses his control and his seriousness and smarts around her because she makes him feel so young, and she makes him feel like he's like a catch. And and any guy probably in mid-30s, who's graying and all that, to have a young kind of college-age girl to be into him, it's a whole different feeling than having a attractive 30-year-old, which is probably something that he's used to dating. But that's just the whole catch, kind of. That's like an excitement factor of having this young college-age chick that's interested in an older guy. I think it makes him feel young and desirable, and that's why he's kind of like keeping her around, and he can't shake her in that sense.
Well, and it's funny too, because if I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt when she's filling out the audition form or auditioning for the show, I think she probably is a very open woman, and she probably hasn't found the great love of her life, and maybe she hasn't even been in love other than what you think is high school love, but it's really infatuation. And she's like, hey, this would be a fun experience. And I'm all about trying different things. I rock climb and I get up early in the morning, and I'm trying to be an actress and model, and life is a banquet, and these people don't even want to belly up and fill their plates. And I'm there. This will be incredible. I think she really believes in all that. But even if she doesn't go any farther than she goes now, or doesn't make it to the final Neil Lane ring, she's really raising her profile for her life, her career, all kinds of things. There's kind of no downside to it. I mean, she gets that extra benefit. She's here for the right reasons, but the secondary reasons only benefit her as a personality. Something like that could be maybe put in a sitcom because she's got this energy as a supporting player, and then she's on her way to sort of having an acting career. She's going to benefit from this even if she doesn't get the ring from Arie, which more and more I think she's probably not, because he's bringing up the age thing, which means it's on his mind all the time.
Yeah, and here's one thing I kind of caught. I mean, I think now I could easily see now a Becca, Kay, or a Tia being in the final.
Yeah.
Especially with Tia telling him she's kind of in love with him and that she's the first one to kind of break that mold. So I think that gives her a heads up. Here's another observation. Now, I'm not sure. I'm just trying to speculate here. Do you remember in the opening season preview, Arie gets to the final, and there's a guy that gets involved with one of his picks, right?
Yes. It's somebody's old boyfriend who comes in.
He's in love with two women, apparently, from what I believe, right?
Right.
And then one of them brings a man back to the equation. The only mention of a man was today Chelsea talking about this ex of hers.
Interesting.
Do you think that could be the man, and that could be that situation? Because there's no other sign or mention, unless we see in the next couple episodes, of some other ex-boyfriend. No girl has brought up an ex or anything like that. The only mention was tonight Chelsea talking about this guy who was potentially wealthy and had all this thing going for him, and just kind of cheated on her and left her. And he's still obviously involved in the child's life, from what it seems like. So now, does that mean potentially Chelsea makes it to the final? It's hard to believe that she'd get that far. I mean, she's borderline hometown for me. But, I mean, things change a lot in this episode. I think we went shooken up a little bit from our expectation, which was just Krystal and the Krystal and Becca kind of show. And Krystal now, I think it's pretty obvious the clock is definitely ticking on her. I would not be surprised if next week was her last episode and she got eliminated midway through the following week's episode. I think she's still safe for next week because there's some filler that needs to be trimmed that had no interactions. So they're going to keep her on Krystal for one more week. But then I think she goes pretty much the next episode, even maybe midway through like a 2-on-1 or a 1-on-1. I don't think she lasts through the following week's episode. So for 2 weeks from now, I think we're talking about Krystal being eliminated.
I think you're exactly right. It's a good question, Jim. There's so many different sort of tropes that the Bachelor franchise traffics in. It's just a question of which one are they going to utilize at this moment or this season. It could be Chelsea's ex who comes back, or it could be one of those out of left field people that you never see coming because they want to keep it a complete surprise. And it could be Becca or Lauren's or somebody else's boyfriend that shows up just as they're starting to get a stronghold on that final four. That's very much in the style of The Bachelor, to keep us guessing and keep us, having the rugs pulled out from under us. Hard to know. But I think you're right. I think what we're starting to see a little bit here is I think Arie is gravitating towards the sort of stable, middling, sort of safe choices that are just like he is. And that means that somebody who's too controversial, like Krystal, she's a goner. She cut her throat tonight. She's only there because the producers want the drama. The Pixie Becca, or as my wife calls her, Becca Boop, because doesn't she look like Betty Boop? I mean, she should go as Betty Boop for Halloween. I said, that's her costume for probably the next 20 years if she wants. And she's got that kind of energy with the big eyes and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure she can do the Cupid doll voice if she can do such a great Krystal imitation. But she's the star. Now she could be the breakout kind of personality here that the producers love, so she gets a lot of screen time because she's the good side of the fame sort of thing that the Krystal's the bad side of. Or, she could be a potential candidate for the Bachelorette, if not this follow up after Arie's done, to another season down the line when she's a little bit older, if she's a fan favorite that people like and want to see come back or something. But yeah, you're right. I think if you look at it, he's really kind of gravitating towards more of the women who are a little bit older, a little more stable, a little more measured in the middle, which is just where he is in his needs and his kind of style and personality as well.
I think out of the many bachelors we had in the last few seasons, is that he actually kind of knows what he wants. He's the most set on knowing his type and knowing what he's looking for, as opposed to a Nick Viall or Chris Soules or Ben Higgins, who's just too goofy to understand what he even wants. But I think this is the first guy that kind of is mature enough and old enough to kind of know, like, hey, I'm not going to mess around here. This is what I'm going after, and, this is what I kind of want to end up with. And that's why he's shown such disinterest in many of these women, and he's just kind of ready to go in that sense, don't you think? I
think you're right. And, the more I watch this franchise and the more I watch particularly the men who they get to be the Bachelor, I can't help but feel a begrudging regard and real respect for Sean Lowe. I mean, he was a little bit bland when he was the Bachelor, and, he did that born again virgin thing, but I think he kept it kind of straight in the middle too. And his choice was not the most colorful or the most crazy. He sent a lot of the crazy ones home a lot earlier than most. And I think he was surely but quietly kind of holding true to what he really wanted out of it. And maybe by not having sex with them, he kept the focus on the personality and who was really going to jibe with him, who he could talk to, who he enjoyed. Because without the sex, he could say, well, I still want this person to be my girlfriend or potentially my wife, which is something incredible. And his has lasted, and they bring him back all the time as kind of the stable example of how it should be done. If Arie goes down that route, good for him. We'll see if he does. But it seems like some of the choices he's now starting to make may be in that sort of Sean Lowe, sort of middling maturity, that is really what kind of keeps the relationship going. It isn't the comet that burns out and burns bright but then burns out after a couple of years, but rather somebody who is easy to talk to, easy to get along with, sort of in the same needs and vibes and wants of their status or their position in life. And, the more colorful extremes don't always then make it to that finish line with them because they're not quite in sync.
Yeah, no, I think this is, like we said earlier, that I think he just kind of doesn't need this. And at this point, he might as well. Since he's been through this before, too, this isn't his first shot there. We got to remember that. I think this might be kind of legitimate for him.
I hope so. I mean, I thought the same of Nick Viall after Bachelor in Paradise. I thought, all right, he's going to get it and he's going to be good. But, he fell short with the way he was letting Corinne Olympias all over him and, appeal to the little head rather than his big head. And then he picks Vanessa Grimaldi after letting Rachel go and Raven go, who seemed like very strong catches. And actually, I think were more popular and likable than Vanessa was. And then he picks Vanessa and he's all over her for 2 months when he needs her for Dancing with the Stars in the audience to cheer him on and all that stuff. And boom, 3 months after the final rose, she's gone. And there's no reconciliation. There's no chance they're back together. We all know the story about that. You've talked about it here on the show rather extensively. I hope that Arie is more like Sean Lowe and not like Nick, who you think is going to be ready to settle down, but then really is still kind of wishy-washy and doesn't quite know what the hell he wants. Sean seemed to say, I want a stable, smart, capable person. She doesn't have to be the most beautiful. She doesn't have to be the most exciting. She doesn't have to be certainly very dramatic. I don't want any of that. I'm ready to settle down and have somebody who's going to be a friend and a companion first and a star and a sizzle, sort of pinup kind of thing way, way down on the list. Hopefully that's going to happen with Arie. We'll see though. It's, if he keeps Krystal around more than an episode or two, then he's still thinking with the little head and not the big head because she's batting her collagen lips and her lip gloss and her, I've aerobicized down to 0.5% body fat. Isn't that enough for you? No, it shouldn't be, Arie. Let's hope it isn't.
Well, yeah, I guess that'll tell us everything in the next couple. If she's not gone 2 weeks from tonight, then we know what exactly it's. This the whole.
Yeah, she could be the Vienna. She could be Jake Pavelka's Vienna. Like how you picked that inexplicably god awful woman, and I think he was thinking she was the sleazy tramp that made his straight fly boy feel like, wow, I've got the hottest girl in the school after me. It's so remedial, isn't it, in so many regards?
Oh yeah, totally. So overall, I mean, we finally saw a little bit of difference that we saw some things that kind of give us more intrigue, I guess, going forward with some more contenders because we were asking to this point, like, this show is the most predictable, boring season ever because there's no one that stands out at all. And I thought today that you finally had some people standing out and being like, you can actually picture them in a Final Four. And last week we just couldn't pick a name out of the hat to get in the Final Four. And now we have an idea.
Yeah, it's like the show and Arie's needs are not one and the same. The show needs to get us excited, gets us captivated, builds up the drama, but Arie's really into the no drama kind of middle ground where he wants somebody who's stable, attractive enough, good companion on the same plane and same needs, but maybe doesn't necessarily make for great television. I would argue that the other Becca and Lauren and some of the, even the Tias and some of those, they aren't necessarily exciting television, but they might be exactly what Arie needs versus the more camera star quality kinds of characters that often shine through on the show.
Yeah, I think if it's up to him in the end, honestly, I think we might see two non very exciting people finish the season, which would be in that case maybe like a Becca K, who just seems so straight laced and just put together and just no controversy or excitement really around her in any way. you just can't form an opinion really because she hasn't provided anything to talk about. But
he'll put the Neil Lane ring on her finger, and then they'll drive to Denny's for the early bird special, and he'll wear his shawl sweater, and they'll be home and asleep on the couch by 8.
Well, I think putting it like that makes too much sense, Jeff.
It's not great television, but it might be what he wants. It might be what he's after.
We'll find out next week what he's into.
That's right.
Of Arie's dating misadventures, and we'll find out more what he's into and who's going home. But I just don't expect they're at least going to Paris, so they're going to be outside of the country. You have to spend some money at that point. But I just wouldn't expect anyone to be eliminated. That would surprise you. Like I said, Jenna and Cien probably, and Jacqueline for sure seem like fillers at this point, that there's no chance for them to move on any further. So that'll be their swan song. And at the week after, I think that's when you're going to start seeing actual contenders starting to fall off and it actually becoming interesting to a point where you won't know on a given episode who could be going home. But we still need to ride out for one more week to get rid of these few kind of fillers. And then from then on, I think we'll see the survival of the fittest and strongest.
There you go. That's it.
There we go. So that will do it for today's episode. We went over time. It's fine. And Jeff, where can people reach you?
They can follow me on Twitter. I am at Jeff York Writer there. I also write movie reviews for The Establishing Shot. That's theestablishingshot.blogspot.com. They can also listen to me talk about movies and their sort of journey from the script to the screen in a podcast that we do each week for the International Screenwriters Association called Page the Screen. It's available at networkisa.org or on iTunes, both for free. So a number of places they can hear me talk about movies and find some of my other musings of the pop culture world.
There you go. And you can find me on Twitter at the JimAlexander. So THE JimAlexander. Like, it sounds official, like the Rock. It's the JimAlexander.
It could have been worse, Jim. You could have had to say the real JimAlexander. Sometimes celebrities have to do that. The real Donald Trump has. I think that's his, isn't it?
Well, the real. Speaking of real, you can check me out also on Real Talker, my website. Get a review of The Bachelor. That's on there right now already for this episode we just talked about. So Real Talker. That's REEL Talker.com, and you can also catch my reviews of The Bachelor and more on thebacheloruniverse.com. So the Bachelor Universe. Everything's with the in front when it comes to me, apparently. So that's how you can reach me anytime and check out some of the stuff. And we'll be back at it next week again for more banter, talking nonsense, and more personal stories of my demise. So, because it's not getting better. I mean, I'm living the Bachelor world on the outside, Jeff. And you know what? If Arie's doing better than me, then I'm not in a good place.
The year is young, and we'll see. We don't know how his story is going to end, so you might be doing far better than him by the time it's all done.
Well,
you don't know.
If it says something that I'm dating older than Arie, and he's getting the women in my age range and younger, then something's really going on here. That's not right.
You're going to be okay, Jim.
Arie, take the women your age, okay? I will go my age group. Let's just keep it even like that.
If you could get over the short hair, Jim, you might have a chance with the Becca Youngs of the world.
Okay, I'll stick to older ones. That's fine. You can have Becca M's because I am just not going that way. And you know what? At this point, I'm going to kill the mic because said enough, Jeff. See you next week, everyone.
Thanks, Jim.